Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I am your host, Nelson, and I am here on this fantastic Friday afternoon. It's not raining anymore. It's actually a pretty nice day over here in Virginia. And so today we are going to be talking about some basketball now. It's a little bit of a slow day for basketball, I will admit. There isn't really a lot of news to go around, but still I will talk about some things that ended up happening. Like, for example, the first segment is going to be about the ESPY Award winners that have just been named out. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the ESPY, like who won, specifically the basketball players that ended up winning, because I'll explain a little bit about the ESPYs in the first segment. And then we also have the second segment, which is going to be about the NBA TV deal that was just recently announced, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about what that could mean, for the NBA. Then in the third segment, I'm going to group all of the things up, like all the free agents and like all the trades that recently happened in like the free agency signings, free agency news in the basketball world. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about that in the third segment. And then in the fourth segment, I'm going to talk about a Lakers trade idea, because for some reason the Lakers are just horrible in free agency and they just couldn't get anyone to sign for them. So fantastic work by the Lakers. And then we also have a special fifth segment that I like to reveal at the end of the fourth segment, so be sure to stay tuned for that. Before I begin, however, I'd like to remind everybody to please use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or the link displayed below the ticker on every show segment. That is GSMCpodcast.net. Excuse me. Really helps the show, makes it much more interactive between myself and you guys. Once again, the link is GSMCpodcast.net. And without further ado, let's go right ahead and go into the first segment, where I talk about some of the ESPY Award winners, like on the basketball side, because the ESPY Awards, they aren't just for, NBA athletes. They're for every single athlete in every single sport. And a lot of the times, the award winners that I'm going to mention, they're actually competing against other athletes in all the other sports. So the fact that they were able to win was all the more impressive, for them and, for their accolades. So as you could see, Jaylen Brown, he ended up winning an award, and the award that he won was for Best Championship Performance. Now, some of the other players that ended up being nominated for this award was Midge Percy for the NWSL Championship MVP, Kayla Martello, Boston College Women's Lacrosse, and Michigan's Blake Corum and Will Johnson as the 2024 College Football National Championship MVPs. So Jaylen Brown was chosen as the winner for the Best Championship Performance. Now, it's a little bit odd considering how amongst the recent finals MVPs, like either in this decade or the past 10 years, he's arguably his performance is arguably one of the most lackluster, I guess you could say, or like one of the least impressive finals MVPs. Like in the past 10 years, I'd say the only finals MVP that was arguably worse than Jaylen Brown was Iguodala when he won the finals MVP back in 2015. A lot of people thought it should have been Steph Curry, and everyone was incredibly surprised that Iguodala even won the finals MVP. But aside from that, Jaylen Brown ended up winning the award for Best Championship Performance, and I'm pretty sure Jason Tatum is incredibly salty at the fact that Jaylen Brown ended up winning both the Finals MVP and the Best Championship Performance, because one of the big reasons why Jaylen's performance was, I guess you could consider, lackluster compared to all the other Finals MVPs is just how incredibly stacked the Boston Celtics actually were. Like, they had so many players in their starting lineup, and you could argue that at least two of those players could have ended up winning the Finals MVP between either Jason Tatum or even like Drew Holiday, maybe even Kristaps. But it's the fact that he had multiple players that were really good options for the Celtics, and performing and trying to share the ball amongst all of the five starters that are very talented is just no easy task. And obviously your performance is going to hinder. Like, your individual performance is going to hinder just a little bit. And so the next player who ended up winning the award was not him. Jesus Christ. I don't know why he is on the display. I apologize for that. He did not win a single award. Let me just go ahead and scroll through all of this. Here we go. Luka Doncic. That's the player that I wanted to mention. I don't know why it fast forwarded all the way to the final slide of my presentation, so I apologize for that. But Luka Doncic, he ended up winning the award for the best NBA player, and that's literally what the award is, best NBA player. And the nominees for this award were between Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Nikola Jokic, and Jason Tatum. So SGA, I mean, Luka Doncic ended up beating SGA in the playoffs, so it makes sense how Luka Doncic was able to win against that. Nikola Jokic, however, he won the MVP for the NBA season, so it's pretty surprising that Jokic didn't end up winning this award for best NBA player, but I believe that this award also takes into account playoff performance, and Jason Tatum was also in the running for the Boston Celtics for being the best player in the NBA, which is, it's a little bit odd to see Jason Tatum in the running for this award because, again, Jason Tatum didn't win the Eastern Conference Finals MVP, nor did he win the NBA Finals MVP. So the fact that he's in the running for this particular award is a little bit odd. I don't see why he was even chosen for this award. But again, probably due to his playoff performance and just how he played in the entirety of the postseason. But aside from that, no complaints on Luka Doncic winning this award. I think it's well deserved. He deserves to win this. And then the next player on this list to win an award, actually 2 awards, is A'ja Wilson. She's one of the 3 athletes that ended up winning multiple awards for the ESPYs. She was awarded the best WNBA player, and the players that were nominated for that were Alyssa Thomas for the Suns, the Connecticut Suns, Brenna Stewart for the New York Liberty, and Nafisa Collier for the Minnesota Lynx. And another award that she ended up winning was, let me just go ahead and scroll through the awards list just to make sure that I got it right. She ended up winning, let's see here, the best athlete in all of women's sports. Now, some of the players in the nominee for this was Caitlin Clark, Coco Gauff, for tennis, Nelly Korda in golf, and of course A'ja Wilson, who ended up winning the award as the best athlete in women's sports. Now, I mentioned Caitlin being nominated for this award, and she also ended up winning 2 awards in the ESPYs as well, and she's again one of the 3 athletes that ended up winning 2 awards for the ESPYs. And if she ended up winning the best athlete for women's sports, she could have been the only athlete on this entire list that ended up winning 3 awards for the ESPYs. Now, I mentioned that Caitlin and A'ja were 2 of the 3. Now, the third player that ended up winning multiple awards was, no surprise, Patrick Mahomes. And, he's just an NFL player, so I can't really talk about that. But he won the award for being considered the best athlete in men's sports. And it's there's not a single NBA athlete that was nominated for this award. So props to him, props to Patrick, but I'm not going to really talk about that. Now, for Caitlin Clark, on the other hand, she ended up winning the award for the best college athlete for women's sports. The award was divided between men's sports and women's sports because, let's face it, it just wouldn't be fair to pair both the men's and the women's sports together. I think it would be rather unfair. So she won the award for best college athlete for women's sports. And the other players that were nominated, or the other athletes that were nominated for this award, were Hayla Bryant, LSU Gymnastics, Sarah Franklin, Wisconsin Volleyball, and Izzy Skane for Northwestern Lacrosse. And she also ended up winning the award for best record-breaking performance when she became the NCAA's all-time leading scorer, breaking Pete Maravich's record. Now, The rest of the athletes that were in the talks of winning this award were between the 49ers' Christian McCaffrey, where he scored a touchdown for a record-breaking 17 straight games, Tara Van Der Stanford's women's basketball coach, getting her 1,203rd win to pass Coach K for most wins by any coach in NCAA basketball history, as well as Max Verstappen, who wins record 10th consecutive races with a victory at the Italian Grand Prix. So the fact that she was able to win this award over several other male athletes and several other, athletes that aren't even playing in her sport is nothing short of impressive. And finally, the last basketball player that ended up winning an award was Juju Watkins. Surprisingly, I'm very surprised that Juju ended up winning the award. She won Best Breakthrough Athlete, and she won it over Hayla Bryant, LSU Gymnastics, CJ Stroud for the Houston Texans, who had arguably the best rookie season by any quarterback ever, and Victor Wembanyama for the San Antonio Spurs. And the reason why I'm surprised she won it over all of the other players was because I thought Victor Wembanyama was going to win as the best breakthrough athlete. I mean, his performance in the final 12 games of the season and, his performance overall with the season concluded is nothing short of impressive. Making it first team all defense in the NBA as a rookie is almost unheard of. And on top of that, through the final 12 games, he was averaging, I believe, 25 points, 12 rebounds, 5 assists, along with 4.5 blocks, which again is ridiculous. I mean, averaging 4.5 blocks in today's NBA, where it's very 3-point heavy and there aren't that many people that attack the basket as much as there are 3-point shooters, is nothing short of impressive in my opinion. And some of the other athletes that were nominated for an award was Best Comeback Athlete Zion Williamson for the New Orleans Pelicans. He was nominated, but he didn't end up winning because Simone Biles ended up winning this game, the Best Comeback Athlete for the ESPYs, and I believe he won it after his performance in the play-in games when he dropped, I believe it was over 40 points. And I almost forgot, the best team for the there was literally an award for best team, right? Just period. There was the Kansas City Chiefs. They were nominated for this award. The Michigan Wolverines for NCAA football. The Las Vegas Aces for the WNBA. The UConn Huskies, the men's UConn Huskies for NCAA basketball. Oklahoma Sooners, NCAA sophomore. The Boston Celtics for the NBA. Florida Panthers for the NHL. The Texas Rangers for the MLB, and the South Carolina Gamecocks for the NCAA women's basketball. And no surprise that South Carolina Gamecocks ended up winning this award as the best team because they are the only team to go undefeated in back-to-back seasons, I believe, for women's basketball. And they ultimately ended up finishing their season with an NCAA Women's Championship, something that they weren't able to do last year because of Caitlin Clark. But aside from that, this is nothing short of impressive for them. And that's essentially all that I have for the first segment. So now I will go ahead and go into the second segment where I talk about the new TV deal for the NBA and how that could sort of adjust, how that could change the season and what it could mean for the NBA going into the future. So I'll be right back after this short break. Be sure to stay tuned.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this second segment, we are going to be talking about the new NBA TV deal. Now, let me just go ahead and move the text over there. And before I begin with this segment, I'd like to remind everybody to please use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or the link displayed below the ticker on every show segment. It is GSMCpodcast.net. Really ups the show, makes it much more interactive between myself and you guys. Once again, the link is GSMCpodcast.net. And without further ado, let's go right ahead and go into this new NBA TV deal. Now, it should be noted, this deal doesn't kick in until the 2025 and 2026 NBA season. So we still have one more season until the new media rights deal gets put into place for the NBA. Now, how much is this new NBA deal worth? Well, it's worth billions, like billions. It's worth $76 billion for 11 years, which is a lot of money. It's a huge amount of money, and the NBA, they sort of needed to do this because of most of the NBA's viewership and a lot of the NBA games, like some of the more popular games for the NBA was Christmas Day. Like a lot of the games on Christmas for the NBA are considered vintage games, and a lot of games on Christmas for the NBA are some of the most watched games in the NBA season. Like the NBA used to own Christmas until the NFL decided to put Christmas games on their own schedule. Now it's like the NBA, like as much as I like NBA basketball, it just cannot compete with NFL football, and it cannot compete with the NFL on Christmas nonetheless. Like they noticed this when the NBA returned in the bubble back in 2020. So when the NBA returned in the bubble, the finals viewership was at an all-time low. But when the NFL returned, like during quarantine, their viewership did not take a hit whatsoever. In fact, it almost increased. Like they were still getting like 20 million views per game at least in just regular season games, as opposed to like where the NBA was getting just millions of views, like just 1, 2, maybe even 3 million views for playoff games. And it's really like, it's a staggering difference, like the popularity between the NFL and the NBA in the United States. So they really needed this media rights deal just so that way they could ensure that there are more games being covered and it's easier for a lot of fans to access some of these games. Because as an NBA fan, there are only like there's only a couple of primetime games that I'm able to watch. Like if I'm not living in New Jersey or in New York, the only games that I have access to are either the Brooklyn Nets or the New York Knicks, right? Like throughout my childhood, those were like the only games that I was able to watch consistently. Like if I wanted to watch Kobe Bryant play for the Lakers, then, you know, it's only like here and there or so-and-so where I get to watch him play, or at least in the postseason where I get to watch him play. So the deals for the NBA are with ESPN, ABC, NBC, and Amazon Prime Video, and these will average at least $6.9 billion per season, and the NFL averages $10 billion per year, but that's with, 5 networks. Depending on how things fare with TNT Sports, the NBA could cross the $7 billion threshold. Like TNT could easily match this deal And, this is just the contract for like the new TV deal. So we'll see if TNT is going to match this deal and sort of join in with the rest of the medias that I just mentioned before to cover NBA basketball. Now, when does this become final? Now, it's not going to be final for at least a couple of weeks. The NBA has a board of governors meeting in Las Vegas next week and could approve the deal there. Once the league sends the finished contracts to TNT Sports, it would have 5 days to match one of the deals, right? So the question now being is, does TNT Sports have any chance? It's very, very slim, at least according to this article from Associated Press. And if the NBA really wanted to keep one of its legacy partners in the game, it could have carved out a limited fourth package of games by now, right? With TNT's recent acquisitions of the French Open, college football playoff early round games, the Big East, and Mountain West, it appears the owner, Warner Brothers, Discovery it's like preparing for life without the NBA. It seems like the TNT is ready to move on from NBA coverage, which is going to be really unfortunate. And Turner Sports has had the NBA since 1984. TNT Sports is paying $1.4 billion per season. Considering the amounts of the three proposed packages, that would make the Prime Video rights the one it would be likely to try to match. Like, they would most likely try to match Prime Video as opposed to matching all of the other TV deals. Now, why is the deal so long? The leagues want economic certainty for the networks and media companies that hold the rights. Live sports continue to be prime real estate for advertisers. Now, how will this benefit the fans? Now, according to this article, you may need to go to your channel guide often, but during the last 3 months of the regular season, there will be a national NBA telecast every night on either ABC, ESPN, NBC, Peacock, or Prime Video. Because, as I mentioned previously, all of those media teams and media rights, they're mainly reserved for the NFL and the regular season because that genuinely gains them more popularity. Like, let's face it, while Prime Video might not be like the most ideal setting for watching NFL football, people are adapting because they want to watch NFL football on Thursdays. And let's see. So how does this affect the NBA? Well, this affects the NBA's salary cap tremendously. So this is sort of why we're seeing a lot of big contracts for rookies and players that haven't really proven themselves. Because in the future, the contract is going to be worth significantly less. A lot of people, for the NFL, they're saying that Patrick Mahomes is significantly underpaid now because he signed the deal, but once he signed the deal, everyone thought that was a super big contract. But now, with all of the other NFL quarterbacks getting paid more than Patrick Mahomes, everyone's saying that Patrick Mahomes is underpaid. The same thing could be said for Jaylen Brown's contract with the Boston Celtics. Eventually, in the future with this media rights deal, it's expected that the salary cap for the NBA is going to increase, and therefore teams wouldn't really be like the Boston Celtics now. They're in the second apron without a doubt, but as the salary cap increases, there could be a chance that after, I say, maybe 3 or maybe even 2 years, 2 or 3 years or 4 years, the salary cap would increase and they would no longer be in that second apron. So this could end up, benefiting a lot of NBA teams and, keeping their players, just making sure that they're happy with the money that they're making. Now, let me just go ahead and continue looking at this article. So who is the top package? ESPN and ABC, they will continue to be home to the league's matchups as well as the NBA Finals. So there's no really change. There's no real change in that department. ESPN and ABC, those guys, they're going to continue owning the NBA Finals. Even though the NBA will have 2 broadcast partners for the first time, the Walt Disney Company was adamant about not sharing the finals. So it would cost Disney $2.6 billion per year, which is just shy of the $2.7 billion per season it pays to the NFL for Monday Night Football, 2 playoff games, and the Super Bowl in 2027 and 2031. Under the current 9-year deal, which expires next season, ESPN and ABC pay $1.4 billion per year. Now, with NBC, the network that carried all 6 of Michael Jordan's title runs with the Chicago Bulls and the first 3 of Shaq and Kobe's championships with the Lakers, NBC is most likely going to air Sunday night package of games once the NFL regular season is over, as well as NBA All-Star Weekend, even though All-Star Weekend is just, bleh now for the NBA. It will regularly air games on Tuesday nights and have a package of Monday games streaming on Peacock. So it's like you're going to see NBA, you're going to have the ability to see NBA games every single night if you were to get some of these subscription deals. So it's not really bad. I don't think it's that bad because, now I can actually watch a lot of these games as opposed to waiting on this day or on this day to watch a specific team that I really want to watch. So it seems like the NBA is going to be entering into the streaming world because, streaming is a lot more popular. And they also saw the success that Caitlin Clark was bringing over to Peacock because, a lot of people wanted to watch Caitlin Clark play. Only makes sense. She is Caitlin Clark. But you were only able to watch her on Peacock. But that didn't stop everyone from ordering or just purchasing a subscription for Peacock. Once the NBA found out that people are willing to purchase these subscriptions, it's like, all right, well, we might as well see if we can do the same thing. It only makes sense. So and there's a lot more information to the rest of these media rights deals, and there's a lot more to this article, but I'm not going to continue on that unless you guys want me to continue on that. Let me know in the comments right now if you guys want me to continue on the rest of the TV deals and what it could mean according to this Associated Press article. But aside from that, we are going to go into the third segment after this short break, which is going to be about some of the basketball news that is breaking out in this, free agencies, trades, because there are some free agent signings that I do want to talk about. There aren't that many. They're just a few because, again, it's a rather slow day for basketball. But I will be right back after this short break, so be sure to stay tuned.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, I'm just going to talk about some of the basketball news that's going around in the NBA or in all sorts of basketball because, again, it's a rather slow day, so there's not really much that needs to be talked about. But one thing that I will bring to everyone's attention is that Kyle Lowry for the 76ers is back, and he agreed to a 1-year deal for the Sixers. He is a 6-time All-Star. He's more commonly known for playing on the Toronto Raptors and winning the only championship that the Raptors have won in franchise history. He's a 6-time All-Star, and he's returning to the Sixers, I believe, on a veteran minimum. I'm just going to make sure. I'm just going to look at this article and make sure. He's 38 years old, and he signed with Philly mid-season after the Miami Heat traded him to the Charlotte Hornets in late January. And Charlotte ended up waiving him 3 weeks later. So a little bit of a Charlotte legend right there. He didn't allow any points scored on him when he was in Charlotte. Now he is back in Philadelphia. He is a Philadelphia native, and he played college basketball at Villanova. And he played in 23 regular season games for the Sixers. He made 20 starts. Obviously, he's not really going to start if Tyrese Maxey is on the court. And he averaged 8 points, 4.6 assists, and 2.8 rebounds per game. He also shot 40% from the three-point line, so while you think he's not as valuable as he was on the Raptors, again, he's really not that valuable when he was on the Raptors. He was a second option when he played with DeMar as well as playing with Kawhi Leonard, but as a veteran and someone who is, 38 years old, he still has some sort of value, and as a three-point shooter and as a competent playmaker. And obviously when you have vets on a team that's relatively young, they can teach a lot of these young players a lot of things that they wouldn't normally learn until, playing several years in the NBA. So you could give those young players a bit of a head start if you have these veterans on the team, which is why the Chris Paul deal with the San Antonio Spurs is seen as a very good deal, because we know how many years Chris Paul has under his belt in the NBA, and his playmaking and his leadership is nothing to scoff at. So he made 6 straight All-Star games and received league MVP votes back in 2015, 2016 during his run with the Raptors, and of course he helped the Raptors win their first and only championship. He played 18 seasons. He played 3 of them with the Memphis Grizzlies. He played another 3 with the Houston Rockets. And then the majority of his career, he played for the Toronto Raptors. I believe it was 9 years. And then he ended up playing with Miami for about 3, or like at least 2, and then Philadelphia just recently. Now, his career averages are 14.3 points, 6.2 assists, 4 rebounds, and 1.3 steals per game. So that's just a little update on his situation and his contract. Another update in the basketball world is regarding Gary Trent Jr. Now, there were talks that he was going to join the Nuggets and Nikola Jokic on a minimum contract, but now there's a new report from Bleacher Report saying that Gary Trent is not going to take a minimum contract to join the Denver Nuggets and Nikola Jokic, which is a little bit unfortunate, because I really think that in that situation with the Denver Nuggets, I feel like he has the best chance and has the most usefulness on that roster. If there's any team that could make the most use out of Gary Trent, it would be the Denver Nuggets, because let's face it, Nikola Jokic and his playmaking is just out of this world. He draws in so much attention, and he's able to find the open shooter, or he's able to find the open cutter, depending on how the offensive set is ran. Now, according to this article, he would not accept a minimum contract to play with Jokic, and Harrison Wind, who is on Twitter, he verified that there is not much interest on Denver's end anyway. Again, Denver is more focused on trying to acquire someone like Russell Westbrook, because Nikola Jokic, he really wants to play with Russell Westbrook, and he's sort of pushing the Denver Nuggets to try and negotiate a deal to bring that guard over to Denver. He averaged 13 points per game, 2.6 rebounds, and 1.7 assists, along with 1 steal in 71 appearances for the Raptors last season. The Nuggets, they're still trying to find a replacement for KCP, since KCP ended up joining the Orlando Magic. And those numbers, they were a dip in production for Trent, and he averaged 17.9 points per game through his past 2 seasons with the Raptors. So, this previous season that he played with the Raptors, it was not really his strongest season. But he still shot 42% from the field and made 39% of his three-pointers, and on 6.4 three-point attempts per night. So that's a very efficient outing for him. Now, he played the 2023-2024 season on an $18.56 million player option, but could be set to move on from Toronto after the Raptors announced an extension for Scotty Barnes and Emmanuel Quickley. And I know what you guys are thinking. This guy could be really good for the Lakers. But guess what? The Lakers don't want him. I don't know why the Lakers don't want someone. It's like they're allergic to three-point shooters. I really don't know what it is, but every single free agent that's a good three-point shooter, they've just been like, nope, we'll pass. No, we'll find someone else. I don't understand why they're just so reluctant to bring in 3-point shooting, which is exactly what this team needs and was arguably the biggest problem when they had Westbrook on the team and when they had Darvin Ham as their head coach. Like, the rotations were bad because there weren't that many 3-point shooters on the team to pair with Russell Westbrook or even LeBron for that matter. And when you have LeBron on your team, like, you know, a all-NBA playmaker, one of the best playmakers that the league has ever seen, why wouldn't you want to surround yourself with 3-point shooters? It just doesn't make any sense to me. And they've never been a strong 3-point shooting team in recent history, which is something that I don't understand. Like, they just refuse to adapt to how the NBA is played now. And it's really infuriating because why wouldn't you want someone that can shoot 3-pointers in the league? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Now, TSN's Josh Lewenberg reported Monday that the Raptors originally offered Trent an annual salary of $15 million to remain on Toronto, but the guard's representatives reportedly asked for a raise to the annual value approaching $25 million. So he wants to make at least, $25 million per year. Now, the $15 million offer is, quote, no longer on the table, as Lewenberg reported. So Trent is going to need to find that money somewhere else. Now, with the market drying up, one league insider suggested Trent would be lucky to get a mid-level exception valued at $12.5 million, which would be a significant down payment compared to the money that the Raptors offered him, which, it would be really sucky for him. Now, Shams Charania and Jovan Buha reported for The Athletic that Trent was a name to sort of watch in free agency for the Lakers, like especially according to this article. But the Lakers would need to move salary just to offer Trent the $5.2 million mid-level exception. So if Trent is not willing to accept a minimum deal, that rules out a whole host of suitors that are hard capped after the first wave of free agency. Again, a lot of teams, they really don't want to get into that first or that second apron, and they don't want to pay all of that luxury tax just to get, one player on the team that isn't really going to bring that much value aside from 3-point shooting. Like, again, while I'm not going to say that Gary Trent isn't valuable, he's not like, he's not like a DeJounte Murray type of value. He's not like a big-time free agent that everyone is just like, oh, we need him. He's not that kind of player, as sad as it is, and as unfortunate for him as it is. Now, again, the Lakers, they would be a very competent suitor for him, but the Lakers just don't want to pursue him, either because they want to avoid the second apron or because they think they can get someone else, which is what I'm going to talk about in the fourth segment, because there is a trade idea for the Los Angeles Lakers, at least according to this article. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about that and, my thoughts on like the move that they are trying to do. Again, I don't really think it's going to be a strong move because, again, they are still going to be capped at that second apron and that's going to cripple them. But aside from that, I'm just going to talk about that in the fourth segment. So be sure to stay tuned.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back with the fourth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fourth segment, I'm going to be talking about a Lakers trade idea according to this article. And obviously it's not going to be a really strong trade because the Lakers are sort of capped at that second apron, and the Lakers are terrible in free agency and they're terrible with trades. Like, it's just amazing how bad they are in free agency, and it's even crazier how bad they are with trades. But teams, they don't really like dealing with the Lakers. Like, I don't know what it is, but a lot of teams in the NBA, they just like avoid the Lakers in terms of trade talks. And a lot of players, they also avoid the Lakers in terms of contract negotiations because either they're afraid of playing in Los Angeles or they're afraid of playing with LeBron, whatever you want to call it. But playing with LeBron, obviously, there's a lot of pressure because not only are you expected to perform and win a championship, you're also most likely going to get scapegoated. I feel like the Westbrook trade over to LA, it really opened a lot of players' eyes on, just how the Lakers media treats a lot of their, important and key players, because Westbrook was crucified by the Lakers media. He deserved it, but a lot of the players, they would much rather not play under that market where they have the stress of constantly performing well and the stress of, constantly meeting these expectations of, and championship aspirations. So a lot of players, they would rather avoid playing in a huge market like that as opposed to playing in a different market that doesn't crucify all of their, players and their fans. Obviously, the Sixers, they aren't really that much better in terms of crucifying their players. The Knicks are another example of players that get crucified if they don't play well. Even the Boston Celtics, they crucified Kyrie Irving when he wasn't playing well for Boston. And, there's a lot of markets that don't really give a lot of the players that much respect when they play well or when they play bad. But the Lakers, with Westbrook and their recent little debacle, I guess you could call it, it was really, really bad. Like, the media was ruthless with Westbrook. And I can't really blame the media for that. Westbrook was hitting the top of the backboard when he was shooting some of his shots. Like, how are you not going to talk down on someone like that? Like, that's just, I obviously, as a fan, I understand, where the anger comes from, but also, as an analyst, you shouldn't really crucify a player like that. Fly is in my way. You shouldn't really crucify a player like that just for taking, just that horrible of a shot. But at the same time, it was Russell Westbrook, and he was playing really, really bad on the Lakers. Now, whether it be a bad fit, whether it be just him playing bad, you can call it whatever you want. He just wasn't good for the Lakers. And I feel like that sort of cripples the franchise and their ability to sign free agents and their ability to do trades. Now, this trade idea is coming in from Bleacher Report. Again, now the title of this is "The Lakers Need Wendell Carter Jr. Trade After Disappointing Offseason Amid NBA Rumors." Now, the quote. They use the word "need," right? They need Wendell Carter Jr. And the average NBA or the casual NBA fan is probably not even going to know who Wendell Carter Jr. is. Because, again, he plays on a relatively low market for the Orlando Magic. Now, the Orlando Magic, for some reason, they barely get any media coverage. Paolo Banchero, who was a fantastic player last season, was barely even talked about. And even in the postseason, the Cavs and the Orlando Magic series, one of the very few series that ended up going to 7 games, was barely even talked about. So, after LeBron signed his 2-year, $101.3 million contract, taking $3 million less from the Lakers than he could have signed for in a concentrated effort by the player and organization to keep the team under the second apron of the NBA salary cap. So the deal would allow the team to retool the roster and make a significant free agency signing or trade to return the Lakers to a legitimate Western Conference contender, right? Now, this team has been oddly quiet in the entirety of the offseason and is arguably one of the biggest losers in the NBA offseason. If it wasn't for the Clippers letting Paul George walk in free agency, the Lakers would most likely be the biggest loser in the entirety of free agency and the entirety of the offseason. They would be tied along with the Atlanta Hawks, who in my opinion messed up the draft, and they also messed up the DeJounte Murray trade that sent him to the Pelicans. I really don't know what Atlanta was doing. But the deal would allow the team to retool the roster, make significant changes, and while it has been quiet, Sean Devini of Heavy.com reported that Magic Wendell Carter Jr. remains a potential trade candidate for the team. Now, I say this now, and I bet you in like 24 hours, the Lakers are going to be like, oh, we're not interested in Wendell Carter Jr., or Wendell Carter Jr. moves on to a completely different team, and the Lakers miss again. But he wrote, and one executive said he's still the kind of player the Lakers should be looking for. Fairly young, probably a little undervalued because of his red flags, and the red flags being injuries, and still tapping into his skill set. The executive told Heavy Sports, the contract is right. It makes sense for them. That's a guy that's monitoring, but a lot of teams are as well. That's a guy they're monitoring, but a lot of teams are also monitoring Wendell Carter Jr. as well. Amid an offseason that did not net the team a legit third star to go alongside LeBron James and Anthony Davis, the Lakers need the Carter Jr. trade to erase some of the disappointment, at least, according to this article. Carter is, he's 25 years old and coming off one of the most productive seasons of his career in terms of shooting, knocking down 52% of his shots from the field for the third consecutive season. And he was better than ever from beyond the arc, hitting 37% from his three-point attempts. Now, if you guys remember from the previous segment, I said the Lakers are allergic to three-point shooters, so maybe they don't even want to touch Wendell Carter Jr. at all. Like, oh, he could shoot threes? Never mind, get rid of him. It's unbelievable how they handle free agency. He averaged 11 points, 6.9 rebounds, 1.7 assists, and 0.6 steals. And he could stand to develop his shot a bit more, something the Lakers and their new coaching staff under J.J. Redick could help with. And his injury history is a little bit concerning, especially when you consider how Anthony Davis also has an injury history, and so does LeBron James, recently playing with the Lakers. Carter dealt with 3 knee injuries, a bad hand, and a bum back in 2024, and he's played in just over 52 games per season over his career. But despite the issues surrounding his health, Carter is someone in the 5 position who can stretch the floor and give the Lakers an outside perimeter shooter. But again, the Lakers are allergic to three-point shooters. But again, this could be really beneficial for AD, who would rather play the power forward as opposed to playing center for some reason. I don't know what it is, but Anthony Davis would much rather play the power forward, even though he's clearly a center. Now, let me just go ahead and see that he has 7 seasons of experience, but is still relatively young, makes him that much more intriguing to the team, and as does his contract. So he's entering his 3rd year of his 4-year deal that will pay him $11.9 million this year, and it's a team-friendly number, and it would definitely help the Lakers avoid, not go too far into the second apron. And that contract, coupled with his potential, what he does well, and how that meshes with the Lakers would like to do on the court, makes Carter a worthwhile trade candidate for the team, and one that it must explore amid an off-season that has been anything but what the most prominent organization in the league had hoped for. Right. So again, I feel like this would be a decent move for the Lakers, but one of the things that the article doesn't really talk about is how he's been playing in a relatively low market. Now, I mentioned the low market previously, but let me go ahead and explain what I mean by that. Now, when you're in the low market, you don't really get that much attention whether you play good, right? Which is what I mentioned with Paulo, but it also goes both ways. You don't get that much attention when you play bad. So there's a lot more, if you go to somewhere like LA, there's a lot more pressure on you to play well, whereas suppose you're playing in Orlando where there's not really much pressure on you to play at all. And so going to a market that's, relatively, from a market that's relatively low to a market that's relatively high in terms of, NBA players and NBA coverage, right? It's a really big jump, and it's something that not many people really know how to handle, right? Like, all of a sudden having these expectations to constantly play well, and all of a sudden having all of these critics on you after you don't play well is going to be a really big change and a big difference in terms of, the environment that he's been dealing with, as well as, his style of play and things of that nature. So I really think that, the article sort of undermines this and just how it affects some of these players. Because, again, Russell Westbrook, when he was on Washington, it's a relatively low market. He was getting paid zero attention to when he was playing bad. Like, there was barely any media coverage when he was playing bad. But when he was playing good and getting so many triple-doubles and averaging a triple-double for the Washington Wizards, like, you know, he was getting a lot of praise for it. So there was more praise when he was playing good, but there was almost zero criticism for when he was playing bad. And spoiler alert, he played bad in a lot of those Washington games. Like, yeah, he would get a triple-double, but his shooting and his turnovers were ridiculous. But that's besides the point. So with that, we are out of time for this fourth segment. So now we will go ahead and go into the final segment where, for some reason, it was a little bit of a debate, but a lot of people were debating Kevin Durant's height yet again. So I will go ahead and give my opinions on his height, and I will explain that right after this short break. So be sure to stay tuned. And we are back with the fifth and the final segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this final segment, we are going to be talking about how tall is Kevin Durant, because that was something that was being talked about, and I'm just going to go ahead and move the title just a little bit. That was something that was being talked about, you know, over the 2 days ago, and, you know, going into yesterday and then going into today. Like, it was a really big discussion because, you know, Kevin Durant, he doubled down on saying that he was 6'9", but when you look at this image right here, like, you can clearly see that he's way taller than 6'9". I mean, when you look at his height compared to Anthony Davis, like, Anthony Davis is listed as 6'10", but you can clearly see that Kevin Durant is just a few inches taller than him. And when you look at Bam Adebayo, he is actually listed as 6'9". But, you know, if you look at Kevin Durant is clearly taller than him, right? But Kevin Durant ended up doubling down on his height being 6'9", and was even alleging that those other players that I just mentioned were actually lying about their height. But that's just not true whatsoever. So if you guys paid attention to Kevin Durant's height since he was drafted, right? He was listed as 6'9", but recently, you know, there's a lot of debate and there's a lot of thought that he's not actually 6'9", but rather, you know, 6'11", or maybe even 7 feet tall. Like, there's a huge debate on just how tall Kevin Durant actually is, and like, him doubling down only accentuates that debate even more. But the reality is that KD, he's like, at the very least, he's 6'10", but at the very most, he's 7 feet tall. But why would Kevin Durant lie about his height? Well, the reason being was because Kevin Durant, when he was drafted, you know, he was drafted during a time where it was like big men, it was illegal for big men to shoot jump shots, right? Back in, like, you know, the 2010s, it was almost unheard of seeing someone like that was 7 feet tall shoot a jump shot. And Kevin Garnett was one of, like, the very few exceptions to those players. Dirk Nowitzki was also a rare exception to one of those tall players that could shoot the three or shoot a jump shot despite being so tall. It was unheard of back in that time. But now, with how the NBA has sort of been more lenient with the shooting, it seems more apparent for someone that's really that tall to be able to shoot a jump shot. I mean, we have 7'4" Victor Wembanyama shooting 3-pointers for crying out loud. But how tall is Kevin Durant? He's like 6'11", 6'10", maybe somewhere around that, because the reason why he lied about his height was because at the time he wanted to be listed as a small forward and didn't want to play power forward, because playing power forward at the time, like playing big, would have restricted his game. And Kevin Durant, he knew exactly just the type of player that he could be and the caliber of a scorer he could be. And being limited to just, setting screens and just running a pick and roll is something that he didn't want to do. So, which is why he, made the decision to sort of not really lie about his height, because that's another stipulation. Like, a lot of people think he lied about his height. He did now recently, because he's definitely not 6'9" now. But I believe when he was getting drafted, because he was relatively young when he was getting drafted. I'm just going to make sure I was correct. Kevin Durant's age on draft night, I believe he was like around 20 years old when he got drafted in 2006. Now, or in 2007, I should say. I apologize. Kevin Durant, age in 2006. I'm just making sure, again, he was about 18 years old in 2006, right? So males, like, they take a longer time to stop growing, right? They usually stop growing at around 21 years old. So what I think happened was that, he was listed at 6'9" when he was drafted, but over the years, as he, until he turned 21, he continued to start growing, and he ended up being 6'11", 6'10", with shoes on or without shoes on, whatever you want to call it, right? But he continued to say that his height was 6'9", so that way he could avoid playing the power forward, because he didn't want to play the power forward and be limited to just being a screener and a popper, because he knew that he can do so much more for a team if he was more of a versatile scorer, and it ended up working out well for him. So the reality of Kevin Durant's height is that he's 6'10", 6'11", and he just didn't want to be relegated to playing the power forward or the big man, because not only would that have been a mismatch on the defense, I mean, let's face it, Kevin Durant is incredibly skinny for an NBA player. And if he was supposed to guard the big man or a power forward at the time, it would have been a very difficult task for him, as opposed to maybe guarding a small forward, which would have been a lot easier since he is a lot quicker on his feet than most of NBA big men that are 6'10" or 6'11". So that's sort of the reason why he ended up lying about his height, or just, and again, I don't really think he was lying about his height, because again, in 2006, when he was 18, he was listed at 6'9", but he just ended up getting taller as the years progressed. So that's sort of hopefully that ends the debate on just how tall Kevin Durant actually is, because I feel like a lot of, not the casual fans of the NBA, they already know that Kevin Durant is at least 6'10", and at most 7 feet tall. But, people just don't really care, because he's just that good of a scorer, and he's that good of a shot creator and things of that nature, right? But that is all I have for you guys on this 5th segment. So with that, we are out of time. Thank you so much for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. And as usual, please remember to use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or the link displayed below the ticker on every show segment. That is GSMCpodcast.net. It really ups the show, makes it much more interactive between myself and you guys. That is all I have for you today on this final segment. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am your host, Nelson. Enjoy your weekend, and as always, take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn ain't